Hi, it's Dennis Daly. In the late 1990s, I interviewed an author named STEVE Pollan. He was the author of a book called Live Rich. I wanted to talk to him because I've always been poor, and I assumed that the first statement I made to him might not have been what he wanted to hear. Stephen, my listeners know, and I do it sometimes just to kind of pontificate, that I can't stand wealth. I own about 3 pair of pants and 4 shirts. Now and then I'm able to use my Delta upgrade.
Right.
And I just have always had this disgust, if you will, of anything that smacked of niceness. Now, I will tell you ahead of time, my mother's family was one generation away from being Amish. They were kind of Amish light. So that's part of it.
So bodily comforts turn you off?
Not totally, no. There's some bodily comforts I love. But I'm just saying, on the surface, and I know it's not in totally what you're saying here, the title struck me as being a kind of book I didn't want to read. So my first question to you is, why would I, as a person who doesn't own nice stuff, kind of has a Kmart kind of existence, want to read this book? Because
Live Rich does not provide a standard of living rich. There isn't a Live Rich 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Live Rich, Mother Teresa lives rich in one way. You can live rich in another way. I can live rich in another way. Live rich merely means having enough money so that you can do the things or that you would like to do to have what you perceive to be a happy life, or own the things that you would like to own for you to what you perceive to be a happy life. Live rich is having enough money to have a happy life. And what Live Rich does is sort of take money out of the closet. You know, it's the big taboo here. We'd rather talk about our sexuality than talk about how much money we earn, or we criticize people who say, I'm out for the money. Live Rich is not earning money for the sake of earning money. It's not earning money for the sake of collecting it. Live Rich is merely earning enough so that you can live rich, as I define it in the book. The wrinkle occurs when I discover, as you will discover, as we've all discovered, that the only way that we can earn money in America today is through our jobs. And that's why it's a little bit difficult. It's enough that we scorn people that manifestly or that overtly say, I'm in this for the money. We don't like those people. We think that's greedy. We think that's a whole host of things. I think it's taking care of yourself and playing the rules that capitalism has created. But we have some ambiguity about work and jobs. The baby boomers particularly thought that work was not for money. The baby boomers believed that work was for self-actualization, that work was for fulfillment, that work was for the spiritual thing that we got out of it, and that, you got all this stuff and the money would follow. I disagree with that totally. I believe that the principal function of work today in America is to provide you with the money to live rich, and it has no other function. If by chance your work gives you fulfillment, then you're a lucky guy. But to look for fulfillment in work, as work is constituted today, it's a search that Don Quixote could better off do. You bring up an interesting point there, and I guess a lot of people, and I'm in that second year of the baby boom generation, technically, as they define it, that I can remember wanting a job in broadcasting so badly, I never asked what it paid. Yes. That in the very early days, and maybe it's because I was living with mom and dad, and particularly in radio, you get free gasoline, you trade it out and all this kind of stuff, that I was actually wealthier at 20 than I am now in many ways. But yet at that time, there was no concern on salary. By golly, I've got a job. Well, yes, and you're absolutely right. And there was something else that they had. They were patriarchs at the time, and they took care of you, and they really cared about you. And if you were loyal to them, they were loyal to you. And at the end of 20 or 25 years, you'd get that Rolex and you'd get that pension, and you knew damn well they would be taking care of you. That implied agreement between the employer and the employee has been torn into 100 million pink slips. That is no longer the case anymore. Now you're as good as you are today. Citibank will fire 5,000 a week ago, not because they're downsizing, not because they're losing money, but because Wall Street will applaud their wisdom in creating additional additional profitability out of the termination of 5,000 people.
When are we going to get to the point, though, where, and I will tell you, it's no secret, the company for which I work, in the 16 years I've been here, has been through a bankruptcy and a half and 8 owners. And each time a new owner comes in, they read the Harvard Business Manual, and one of the first things it says is if you buy a company, you can probably fire about 8 to 9% of the employees because they're not needed. They're fat at that point. So we've had 8% fired 8 times.
Probably.
But when are we going to get to when are we going to get to the point, though, where business realizes that there's nobody around to do the work anymore?
Well, business doesn't realize that, and the fact of the matter is that as we have become technologically proficient, we need people less and less and less, especially in your bloody industry, in your media industry. We're not going to have real voices soon. We're going to have made-up voices. I think your industry is an industry that will soon do without most of its people totally. I think that if it's only been 8% with each change, soon it's going to be 10 or 12 or 14%. And the minute they can get a dog to do what you do, they will, because they won't have to worry about his age. They won't have to worry about what they're going to pay him.
Or pension.
Yeah.
Pension and welfare.
I mean, the fact of life is that you're a temp. Like it or not, I don't care how long you've been here, you're a temp.
We're all penciled in.
And you got to act like a temp. And acting like a temp means constantly looking for the next job. I'm not asking you to betray your employer. I'm not asking you to be disloyal. I'm asking you to control your termination yourself. You will decide when you're being terminated because you will find the next job.
I don't want to talk about the job aspect forever, but something hit me the other day, and I describe myself as not being pro-labor, but being anti-management. The fact that why does anyone owe loyalty to an employer and think, oh, I have to give 2 weeks' notice, I have to do that, when you're fired, you're not given 2 weeks' notice, when the rules are written up above you. I mean, I believe in loyalty to an employer. I believe in doing your job. But don't we still have a false sense of how loyal we should be when if the shoe were on the other foot, they just wouldn't give a darn and you'd be out the door?
Live Rich says you don't have to be loyal at all. Live Rich says you just do your job for the money that you're being paid. Live Rich says you're doing it for yourself, so you want to do the best job possible. Live Rich says you're a mercenary, and a mercenary is a professional, and a mercenary wants to go to that next job and have a good reputation from the job he's come from.
But who pounded the ethic into us? Was it management?
It was mommy and daddy, and it was management, and it was the unions, and it was capitalism. And they really took care of us for a while, but that's gone forever.
Yeah, my dad was with Montgomery Ward 38 years, and had he not gotten ill early, would have died working at Montgomery Ward. But we are about as far away from that, selling your soul to the same company. And it amazes me, friends of mine, I can't find them anymore. They've been through 3 jobs since I saw them last.
You know what the nice thing about it is? In this sequence of where we are now, in this 21st century reality, we're really free people now. We don't depend on the boss anymore. We don't depend on our job anymore. We depend on ourselves. And that has a wonderful aspect to it. You see, in living rich, I'm also saying you're living free. I'm also saying you have choices. I think we were shackled with this idea of career. We were always taking jobs to please mommy and daddy and our professors. You know what our professors told us? They said, follow your passion, and the money will come. But
you're saying in a way we're all journeymen now.
I'm saying that we're all free agents, we're all temps, we're all Germany, we're all mercenaries is what I'm saying. We are professional soldiers who will do the best job we can. We will want to be paid what we're worth. We will improve our stock as we can, and then we go to the next job and hopefully be paid more. I'm saying that career is not as important as it used to be, that its only importance is to provide us with the money to live rich. That's its only importance. I'm saying that the cuddly stuff, that the kissy stuff, that the fulfillment stuff, that the passion stuff we're going to get out of our real lives. We're going to get out of the lives that count, which is with family, which is with children, which is reading books, going to concerts, taking trips, etc., etc. And if you ever want to, buying yourself some nice stuff. That's not for you, of course.
Well, but isn't it a shame the number of people who only find fulfillment at work? I mean, I've done a lot of talking about this. I've been single all my life, and in many ways, my work family has been my family. That's unfortunate in a lot of ways for a lot of us,
really,
because it makes it tougher to leave.
None of that. You know, they say get a life, and you see, it's easy to talk around the Xerox. It's easy to share a lunchroom. You spend 8-9 hours with these people. It is not the place to create your life. It wasn't made that way. It's no longer made that way. In the book, I talk about your demeanor on the job. And you know what I say? I say you dress up every day. You respect that job. You don't socialize. You don't go out with them after work. You don't meet them for breakfast before. You do your job, and then the wonderful things of life you'll do when you get home. So you're just going to have to work on a more healthy life. These people who have embraced their careers, it's such a horrid thing for you and your job to be the same thing. That's not a life. That's not a life.
Maybe I am ignoring the obvious, where at my age I really have no savings. I spend all my money on airline tickets. My hobby in my life is going someplace every weekend. I do this show on the road most of the time. But I am almost revulsed by businessmen on planes who can't throw their clothes in a little bag, as I do, because they'll wrinkle, and who are sitting there with their laptop instead of doing a crossword puzzle or looking out the window enjoying the clouds from 37,000 feet. It's begun to really bother me, the number of people who are ruining the texture, if you will, of this airline flight by turning it into an office in coach class.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, these people are simply not living rich. It's their choice. I say we have a choice, and our choice can be to live rich, which is not to be overly preoccupied with our jobs and not make we and our jobs synonymous things. These people are doing their jobs full-time, 24 hours a day. I think it's the height of stupidity.
Stephen,
it's nearly worse than retiring.
Tell us about you. What's your background, and do you practice what you preach?
Oh, yeah. I must tell you that Die Broke and Live Rich are the sum total of my life experiences. Number one, I'm 69 and a half years old.
Would you be offended if I told you don't look it?
No,
all?
I would not be offended at all.
You have a wonderful, healthy glow and a youthful energy about you that belies your age.
And I sort of enjoy what I'm doing. I'm one of these lucky guys that can make money out of it and still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But that's rare. That's rare. My wife is the same age. My wife is an editor of a magazine in New York. I have 4 children. 1 is a writer. 1 is an actress. 2 are entrepreneurs. They're all married. I have 9 grandchildren. I have discovered that it's for the grandchildren that I was created.
Really?
I recently discovered that my life is for my grandchildren. I graduated law school. I became a lawyer for a couple of years. Then I joined the business sector, and I became the president of a closed-end investment company on the American Stock Exchange. I was fired from that after about 6 years for really doing a lousy job for them, and I became a banker. And I was a banker for 2 or 3 years, and I sort of liked that. I went back to lawyering, got tuberculosis in 1978, and was laid up for 2 years, and Corky and I got broke. We really got broke, and I was unemployable for a period of time. Then I started on this career. I've had 4 or 5 careers, and my career today is I'm acting as a lawyer. I consult with people. I started writing for magazines. I started writing books. I have a great co-writer. I've done about 14 books. And, you know, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. Corky and I decided, that's my wife, we decided about 3 or 4 years ago that we would die broke.
It would come out even at the end.
Yeah. Well, our last check should be to the undertaker, and with any luck, it'll bounce.
Good.
You know, I spoke to my daughter, Tracy. I did Die Broke on Oprah's show last year, and I knew Oprah would say, what does Tracy think about Daddy wanting to die broke? So I asked Tracy what she thought, and Tracy said, Daddy, I don't want to hear how much you love me at the reading of your will. I need to hear how much you love me now. So I'm working very, very hard to help my kids, and some of them are not going to do as well as I did. They all have a sense of urgency. They all have the work ethic. They all have nice things. And that's me. I'm a person that has plodded through 6 different careers, always looking for change and always looking for where the money was. And I am taking this money, and I am having a wonderful time with my children. And I am sending them to trips, and I'm sending them to school. And, I have one child as a writer. Writers just don't do that well.
Sure.
So I'm just available to them. So Corky and I have decided that we are alive today to serve the children that we love. And that's who Stephen Pollan is.
Well, I love telling people what my career was. I started out in radio in a small town in Indiana, doing the kind of disc jockey things, working Sunday morning, playing all the religious shows, working my way up, and finally I stayed there till I was 30. Now, the thing about that is most people don't stay at a radio station. The joke is, do you know anybody who's been at any small radio station more than 2 Christmases? It just doesn't
I didn't
happen.
know that.
So I moved to Washington, D.C. when I was 30, and I got a job at an all-news station there. And after 10 months, they announced the station was being sold, and all 19 of us were out of work. Well, of course, I came from an environment that unless you stole a typewriter or walked off with the owner's wife, you had a job the rest of your life in radio. So the next thing I did was I heard of a job at Mutual Broadcasting System that there was a new talk show host coming up. So I walked into this room, and a guy comes in. He's got a cigarette in each hand. He says, "Hi, I'm Larry King. Who are you?" So I worked with Larry King for a year. I left there and became my congressman's press secretary from Indiana. A year later, he lost the election.
No kidding.
So then I became a spokesman for the veterinary section of the agriculture department for 5 years, and then came to UPI. So I can safely say in my own life, I may not have much to show for it now, but I can tell you stories about a lot of different aspects of life. I love it.
The expression, I have not much to show for it.
Well, I do, though. I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Of course you do. You have color. I mean, you haven't had a black and white life. You've had a technicolor life.
I love it.
I have nothing to show either. I have memories of people who love me that I've helped. Mm-hmm. And that's enough to show.
But why is it that even I, who love to preach against excesses, if I may digress for a second, I'm waiting at the airport a couple of nights ago, at the curb at Burbank Airport with a couple of people whom I did not know but struck up a conversation with. And this man gets into an extremely expensive convertible.
Yeah.
And he wants out, so his wife honks. And I yelled at these people, "Excessive wealth!" And I thought if he'd had a gun, I mean, it was a stupid thing to say, but I was just, have you ever seen an Audi, a BMW, or an expensive car use turn signals?
Oh, sure. I mean, no. Well,
no, never.
No, they just do it.
Or a taxi, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But why did I suddenly, who tends to pontificate all the time about the stupidity of wealth, connote monetary success talking about myself, saying I have nothing to show for it?
I don't know, but
No, I don't know.
And you are a bit idiosyncratic, but that's okay too. In Live Rich, I talk about the kind of car you should buy. In Live Rich, I talk about what you should be wearing on the job. I dare say you would probably agree with a lot of the things I say. I'm not looking for a life of monastic celibacy, nor am I looking for a life of poverty. I'm looking to have nice things that last, that are practical.
What are the common mistakes people make as far as managing their money, as far as directing the flow that they do have into areas that prevent them from living rich?
I tell you, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people have in connection with their personal lives, their personal financial lives, is to believe that it's a race. They compare. Their goals are unrealistic goals. They don't realize, let me put it to you this way. I believe that your only responsibility in your financial life is to do the best that you can do. And that's all you have to do. I do not believe in having a certain amount of wealth at 65, at 75, or 85. I believe that what you need to do is to do the best that you can do. These rules, which were written by the insurance companies, by the mutual funds, by the so-called financial pundits, are all nonsense. Roosevelt picked 65 because people were dying at 62, so he had aces back to back. We're going to be living to 85 or 90. We're going to be working for 85 or 90. All you really have to have in this life is a sense of urgency. And regard money as what it really is, as a tool to acquire things for you. So make it one of your goals. Don't compare, and work your butt off.
By don't compare, you mean don't try to keep up with the Joneses.
Don't compare what you have with they, because it's a different world for each of you.
Which is why you can say that a person on a very meager income can still have a fulfilling life.
Absolutely. How much you have has nothing to do with your fulfilling life. It's what you do with it. I mean, we get back to Mother Teresa, who, had a fulfilling life. She went out and she worked and raised the money, just raised enough to do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
Live rich is not collecting money for the sake of collecting money. Live rich is not getting fame. Live rich is not getting applause. Live rich is being happy and free, but it takes money to do it. And this is why it's a contrarian book. People, I talk about money with a great deal of approbation. I think money is a marvelous substance for what it can buy. To get out of a bean counting HMO, money can do that for you. Money provides you with Prozac, Viagra. Money, the relationship between money and happiness is nearly seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the things that make you unhappy that money could cure. What is happiness? What is happiness but the byproduct of experiences that you've had in your lifetime? What can money do about that? Money could afford you a panorama of experiences which can lead to happiness. So this is a book that comes out in favor of money. This is a book that comes out in favor of work is for money and that's all. And don't let them kid you. That's all it's about. And you go from job to job to job. This is a book that says don't sit back and be reactive and rely upon them, your employer, to take care of you. He will not, she will not, it will not take care of you. You got to work for yourself. So you got to be proactive. You got to make yourself available. You are always looking for the next job.
Those people who have to do with little, how do they enrich their life? I mean, what does the person on the low end of the spectrum do to live rich? Does a lot of it depend on, family and friends, ethics, a religious background saying, hey, I can survive in this?
Well, one of the things let's talk about that person for a minute. That person could also be living by rules that just don't apply anymore. That person may feel a deep-seated feeling about money, which is just totally unrealistic. That person may not have a lot of money because he chooses not to have a lot of money, because he doesn't know that having a good amount of money could make him very, very happy. That person may think that the exploration for money, that the attempt to make money, is an evil act, because some of our church people teach us that. That person may think that in his or her quest for money, he's taking it from somebody else, which is not true. Life is not a zero-sum game. So let's go to that person and why that person doesn't have a lot of money. And it just may be not by reason of happenstance. It may be by reason of, you'll forgive my expression, of stupidity. They don't know any better. So, I think that maybe one of the reasons that person is in the plight that person is in is maybe not a realistic regard for the greatness of money, for what it can achieve for you.
It's interesting, though, in my dealings with many conservative religious commentators, that there is now a thread going through many of those where they're actually telling people it's okay to invest. It's okay to be prosperous. I worked off and on as the assistant religion editor for the radio network in Washington before I moved here to the West Coast, and I was amazed that these really old-line,
The Protestant sects mostly.
Yes, are now beginning to put that in as a very strong
wealth.
ethics.
They
Yeah.
applaud wealth, yeah.
It was just interesting to hear that. I had not really heard that then.
But there are a lot of things wrong with money, and there's a lot of unfairness and ambiguities with money. What is the reason older people are paid more than younger people with the same abilities? That's sort of not fair. What is the reason that teachers are paid less than lawyers? That's sort of not fair. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of unfairness about it.
Why do our police have to work 3 jobs?
Okay,
in many cities?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
it's interesting. In the beginning of this dialogue, I thought we were disagreeing, but we don't disagree at all, as far as I can see. I think you have a healthy respect for happiness. I think you have a healthy respect for freedom. I do too. I will tell you that a sine qua non to freedom and happiness is having an amount of money to do this for you, because it doesn't happen by spontaneous combustion in a broom closet.
No, I understand that, and I also understand that in many ways, maybe I'm representative of some people who poo-poo the concept of wealth out of jealousy.
That could be, or out of evil, that they took it from the world.
Yeah.
Out of evil, that they were evil.
Because I mentioned that my mother's family was a little bit away from Amish. My dad, boy, talk about me being a blowhard. My dad would see, particularly a fashion show on television.
Yeah.
He could not understand what he called a kind of the diversion of wealth, all the accoutrement that came with wealth. He loathed the stock market. If he were alive today, he would be rejoicing that the market is down, because he couldn't conceive of anybody making money doing nothing.
Yeah, well, I incidentally, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think you need to work for money. I think that the money you work for is a lot better than the money you win in the lottery or you win at the stock market.
I was on a plane the other day sitting beside a fellow, and we had been in a long conversation. I'll make this very brief. He had used the word welfare cheat in his conversation, so I knew immediately what his mindset was. And I said, how's your portfolio? And he said, oh, it's great. And I said, well, the third of the money you make there, whom are you giving it to? He said, what do you mean? I said, the third you're making while you're sleeping. He said, I don't understand. He said, my money makes money 24 hours a day. I said, that's the point. I said, you blast people who are watching TV on welfare. At least they're up and dressed.
Yeah.
I said, you're making money while you're sleeping. It was a very long flight after that.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, doesn't everybody ever tell you you're a gadfly?
I know.
And that's what you're doing, and you're being a tease.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
What's the main message that you want to leave from Living Rich?
Freedom. Living rich gives you freedom. I have discovered, I used to think that one of the most important attributes of life was feeling good. It's freedom. Our forefathers talked about freedom. I never paid attention. But in having enough money, you get a freedom. You become unshackled. You don't have to worry about them, the boss. You don't have to worry about the job. So the message in Live Rich is make money a priority, and from that you will have freedom, which in turn will allow you to live rich, which in turn will create happiness.
I hope this doesn't sound like an off-the-wall question, but have you been to a class reunion lately?
No, I've never been to a class reunion.
I went to my 30th 2 summers ago, and I was amazed at the people my age who are talking about burial. And well, I have this plot here, and the wife and I have this CD, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm still out thinking, gee, maybe I can go to the Grand Canyon in a couple of months.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you can.
Yeah, and they scared me. And I had to get out of there.
How old are you?
I'm be 52 in March.
Oh, so you're younger.
Yeah,
I mean, you just started
but still,
life.
the guys
at 52.
We're at 50. We're saying at 30 years out of high school, all of a sudden their whole focus is the funeral home now, and I'm thinking this is nuts. I had to get out of it.
Totally nuts. Your focus on life should be life.
But what I'm saying is, your peers must revel in you. Because I mean, I don't want to make too big a deal about this, but your attitude keeps you so young. You look it. But I mean, you just, this whole feeling you have that manifests itself in the book, and the word freedom that you're using, you really practice what you preach. I mean, you just have this fun look about you.
And it's a great time I'm having, and I'm living rich.
Why not?
Why not? Thank you. Why not?
Stephen, thank you for taking the time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your book tour.
Thank you. You were delightful.
Okay.
And what you were able to do for me is reprocess some of this stuff, which I'm constantly doing. I only get that when I speak to people in the print media. I very rarely get it when I speak to a person like yourself. Well, you're a thoughtful person. People in print try to be thoughtful. People on TV are not able to be thoughtful. People on radio, more so.
When I was still in Washington, D.C., and I'm still recording here, one night in the newsroom, we were able to watch a satellite feed from Miami to the network in New York of one of the local Miami TV stations during Hurricane Agnes. Agnes was a long time ago. And there's a newscaster in Miami who looked kind of like a former football player. And I said to myself, this guy was chosen on his looks. Kind of like Rock Hudson, who was chosen as an actor and then learned to act, finally. Chosen as a pretty handsome guy and then learned to act. And this guy is obviously reading the monitor. Well, they go to a fellow reporter on some island where the hurricane is crossing. And the anchor says, "Well, Bill, what's it like? You're in the eye of the hurricane. Why is it so quiet?" Well, the reporter on Bermuda, wherever it is, looks at him as if, what a dumb question. And he proceeds to explain to this anchor that he's kind of in the hole in the donut right now, and that behind him is this huge wall of water, and when this hole in the, well, he must have said hole in the donut 9 times, as if to say, how did you get your job? Here's a guy, how can you be an anchor in Miami and not know what a hurricane looks like? But it educated us to the fact that there are people out there in the media, there are people who are supposedly representing the envelope of journalism who don't know what the hole in the donut is.
Oh, listen, let me tell you something. In a way, this is going to sound sad, media, like real estate, is an easy entry, easy exit field.
Really?
I mean,
huh?
well, look, I used to work. I worked for. I left this out of my career. For 6 years, I was the on-air personal finance expert at CNBC, and I became intimate with people in media.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a good amount of TV because I've written 14 books, and with each book, I've done major TV. Also, in my practice, I have a big career practice. Half my clients are media people. And I help design their careers, or in the record business, or in the music business, or something like that.
Well, one of the things I try to do, and my colleague Pat Nason, we talk about this often, is when, for example, I'm going to be interviewing Ed McMahon in 2 weeks. Now, I've interviewed Ed before, and we've worked together on some projects. I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out what questions I can ask him that I know he hasn't been asked much before. For example, I was very fortunate to spend part of a day with Mel Blanc about a year before he died. And, of course, I'm asking about Bugs Bunny, but I also ask about his participation on the old Jack Benny radio show and his TV show, and I tried to ask about that. But even at that, later, after he died, someone ran an interview that he had done for the Smithsonian. And I'm suddenly realizing that the answers he had been giving me were verbatim to what he had given the other reporter. And it occurred to me that when you become famous or you on a book tour, you must hear the same question.
Yes, there is a sameness. There's no question.
It must be tough to have to sit through that.
The things that I would ask him that I think an audience would appreciate. What was the biggest mistakes you felt you haven't made in your life? What do you think are your biggest defects? And when you discovered them, what did you do about them? Mm-hmm. Get to the intimate stuff. What are you proudest of, and why? Do you ever think that you're pretending? Some of the questions that the personnel people will ask, the new employee, what do you consider your best asset? What do you consider your worst asset? Well, I'm a workaholic.
And for some companies, that would be a good asset.
Yeah, probably.
Stephen, I said thank you once. I'm going to say it again. Stephen Pollan, the book is called Live Rich. I hope I didn't get off on too much of a tangent at the beginning.
No, I'm just eager to see what you're going to be doing with this. But I think in any event, it's going to help the sale of the book because, after all, I wrote the book to make the money.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So save your nickels and dimes because according to Stephen Pollan, there's no shame in that. I'm Dennis Daly.